So a few weeks ago, a gentleman reached out to us on email, and it was about his son. And his son was an early teenager and currently in the hospital, being hospitalized for an eating disorder, anorexia. And this gentleman reached out to us, me in particular, and wanted me to reach out to his son and just give him some words of encouragement while he was in the hospital. You see, I've shared this story on platforms in the past and before about my eating disorder and what I went through, and it was a pivotal point in my life. It really was. It changed the trajectory of everything I wanted to do afterwards in terms of nutrition and fitness, and for years it impacted my life with a negative relationship with food, an unhealthy relationship with food. And when I reached out to this gentleman's son in the hospital and talked to him for about 30 minutes, and we shared similar stories, and as he was explaining what he was going through and what was going through his mind and what he experienced over the past year of essentially starving himself and losing all this weight and working out in excessive amounts, it took me back to when I was 14 years old in his exact situation and experiences, and the similarities between our two stories as he was talking and I was listening. It took me back to that moment, now 15, 16 years ago, and remembering the impact it had on my life. So I felt I had an obligation, a responsibility to bring my story to light again, to reshare my story of my unhealthy relationship with food, my eating disorder that, like I said, changed my life, because I know so many people are currently going through something similar, and especially in the fitness space, the fitness industry, that's what we do. That's who we are. We, as me and my brand, are in the fitness space, and I see people with unhealthy relationships with food, eating disorders all the time. So like I said, I feel like this story that I'm about to tell is my responsibility, in hopes that it helps at least one person listening. So I'm 30 years old now, and 15, 16 years ago, I was 14, 15 years old, and the Nick Bear then was very similar to the Nick Bear now. However, around this time in my life, I went through a pretty significant change. And for some reason, I wanted to lose all this weight, all this body fat. And when I think about this, when I take myself back to, 14, 15 years of age, I can remember moments in time like it was yesterday. I can remember things that I put myself through or told myself or was doing to myself in order to lose weight. Like growing up, I was chunky. People might say like big boned. I was never really overweight. I was very active. My family was, very family focused, and the culture was amazing. My mom's side of the family, my dad's side of the family, we all love to eat. From central Pennsylvania, so there's just like some really good food up there. And being too strict on a diet was never something that was preached in the family. We ate healthy, we ate generous amounts, we ate fresh food that was, grown in my grandparents' garden. It was this point in my life where I found something that I could personally control every aspect of it. That was the food I was consuming and the weight I had the ability to lose. I remember like it was yesterday, like these small moments, these small stories, and I'll bring up some of these stories, but it started out by slowly decreasing the amount of food I was eating and slowly increase the amount of energy I was spending through working out. And at this point in my life, I'm in middle school, I'm playing middle school sports, I was very athletic, I was playing baseball, I was running track. I had a really solid group of friends, but I found this ability to control food. And looking back, I remember this thing that I would do where throughout the day I would touch my hip bone. I would grab my hip bone, and if I could feel my hip bone a little bit more every single day, I knew that I was losing weight. And I would feel my stomach, and my stomach felt a little bit flatter every single day. I knew I was losing weight. One of the moments I vividly remember was middle school lunch. I'll always remember middle school lunch because when I first decided I wanted to start losing weight, I remember going through the middle school lunch cafeteria line and picking up a bottle of water, a turkey and cheese sandwich, and an orange. And in the beginning, I would consume all of this. And as time progressed, I would drink the whole bottle of water, I'd eat half the orange, and I'd eat the whole turkey and cheese sandwich. And as more time progressed, I would drink half the bottle of water, not eat the orange, start pulling away some of the bread, so I'd have maybe half the bread and the turkey and cheese. And towards the end, I'd have a few sips of water, no orange, no bread, just the turkey and cheese from the sandwich. And if I ended up getting back to class after lunch and I was still hungry, that was a mental win for me. And I remember in the evenings before going to bed, that if I went to bed starving, like I felt like I had a pit in my stomach and I was so hungry. If I would go to bed hungry, starving, that was a mental win for me. That also was a win. It was just such an unhealthy relationship with eating and food at the time where I wanted to eat less. I wanted to control these hunger signals that my body was sending to my mind, and I wanted to keep losing weight. In my mind, I thought I was really good at hiding this stuff from my friends and family, of not eating and working out too much and losing the weight. In my mind, I thought, I'm getting away with this. But it didn't take too long for my parents to realize something was wrong. My energy levels were just dramatically decreasing. I was almost like a zombie. I was, my clothes were hanging off me essentially. And it didn't take long for my mom to schedule an appointment, doctor's appointment, to figure out what was going on, like what was wrong. So I remember the first doctor's appointment my mom set up, and we walk in there, and I knew in my head what I was doing to myself. I was starving myself, and that's why I was losing weight. That's why I was feeling sick. That's why I was fatigued. But it was that part of me that I wanted to be in control, and I didn't want anyone to know. I was embarrassed. I was embarrassed of it. So the doctors were trying to figure out what was going on. And they put me through all these tests. And I do all these different things. At one point, the doctors thought it might have been an ulcer in my stomach. So there are certain foods that I had to avoid. At one point, they thought it was maybe a worm that I had acquired when we were on a family vacation in Mexico the year before. And I remember it got to a point, because I would also go through these periods where I'd starve myself and I'd binge very heavy. I would just consume a massive amount of food and I'd feel very sick afterwards. And I got to this point where the doctors wanted to do this one test where they brought me in, they put me under, they put a camera down my throat to see what was in my stomach, like what was going on with my stomach, if it wasn't working properly or what the issue was. And I think it was 2 days before that, I had this big binge meal where we went out to eat after like a baseball game. And I remember eating like frosted animal crackers. I had ribs and french fries. I can remember where I was sitting in this restaurant for this meal. And those 48 hours, like I remember it vividly, like I said, like it was yesterday. So I had this big binge meal. 2 days later, end up in the hospital with this scope down my stomach. And after the procedure, the doctor says, we see all this food in your stomach, this big meal from what you ate 2 days ago. Your stomach isn't working. It's not digesting. Like my body was shutting down. Over this time period, I might have lost 30, 40 pounds, maybe more, in a matter of 6 to 8 months. And the weight was just falling off me. And at my lowest, I might have got down to like 125, 130 pounds. And I look back at pictures, just bones, like skin and bones. You can see my elbow bone sticking out of my skin. And my body was literally shutting down. During this entire time, I knew I was starving myself. I knew what I was doing to myself, but I was embarrassed. I was scared of what other people would think. And I was so deep in at this point that I couldn't turn back. I had to keep going. So the doctor's visits continued. My mom's pulling me out of school to go to the hospital, to go through multiple tests, what felt like every other day at this point. The pinnacle point where it really made it feel real was, I remember this one Saturday morning. It was probably like spring, maybe summer at this point, and I was playing for this baseball team, in middle school still, and our jerseys were green and yellow. And I remember waking up a Saturday morning, not being able to get out of bed to go to this game because I had no energy. Like, my body had nothing left. I was done. Like, my body didn't want to get out of bed, couldn't walk me down the stairs. I was so fatigued and tired. And that's when my mom made an appointment for that Monday to go back into the doctor's. And this day was different. Where we drive into this, it was Hershey Medical Center up in central Pennsylvania. Hershey Medical Center, which we're at like every week at this point. This time, instead of going left, we go right. We pull in this facility, and I see it says eating disorder clinic. And at that point, I knew I was caught. I knew that my mom and the doctors knew what I was doing to myself, and that was it. They knew. They knew at that point. Looking back now, I think of the emotional and mental toll that took on my parents, especially my mom, during this time. I can only imagine what she was going through on a daily basis, going to and from these doctor's appointments, thinking her son was dying from this disease that no one could figure out what it was. And I remember walking up these stairs into this eating disorder clinic, and didn't take long for the receptionist to call my name back. Me and my mom go back, and the doctor says, "Hey, we know what you're doing. You are starving yourself, and there is an eating disorder here." And I just remember stopping and just breaking down, like crying, realizing I was caught, realizing I was no longer in control. Realizing that what I was doing to myself was hurting not only myself, but other people as well. I realized that at that point, it wasn't only affecting me, it was affecting other people in my life. And I think to realize that at 14, 15 years old was, it was big, it was heavy. It was heavy. And it's the best way to describe it. And I remember pulling into the driveway, and the first thing I did, after talking to my mom about, I'm going to fix this, I'm going to get better, I want to get better, I want to get better, was I went in the house, and I realized I had to start eating again. I walk into the kitchen, I open the cabinets, and in there was a box of Pop-Tarts. And at this point in my life, I'm eating maybe 300, 400 calories a day, starving myself. And I look at the Pop-Tarts, and I realize in one Pop-Tart there's 200 calories. I realize in two Pop-Tarts there's 400 calories. And I just remember like how difficult it was to comprehend how many calories were in these two Pop-Tarts. And I made myself eat those two Pop-Tarts. I made myself eat those two Pop-Tarts to commit myself to getting better. It took years, literally years, probably took 4 or 5 years to reestablish a healthy relationship with food. Throughout high school, I still had an unhealthy relationship with food. However, it was better. I was healthy. I was putting more weight on. I slowly started to increase more calories into my diet. I slowly started to put weight on, but I was still always conscious of my hip and what my hip felt like. But it was these small baby steps, and I was committed and dedicated to getting better. And I had my family's support along the way. This is actually something I hid from my friends for a long, long time. Long time. Maybe even a decade. I kept from my friends and other family members. And then I went to college. And in college, for the first 3 years, I lived and experienced pretty normal, average college life. I I wasn't super strict on my diet, even though I ate healthy. I got super into training. I got super into bodybuilding and strength training and just putting on size and strength. And it was around this time, my last year, it was probably 18 months out from graduating college, I decided I wanted to do a bodybuilding competition. And I realized in order to do this bodybuilding competition, I had to lose about 30 pounds and get down to single digit body fat percentages. And I had to manipulate my diet in order to achieve these results. It was a trigger. And being in control of my diet again and forcing myself to count calories, count macronutrients, being fats, proteins, carbohydrates, in order to lose weight. I had this much time to lose this much weight, and if I didn't stay on track and control and track everything in between, I wouldn't achieve the results that I wanted to achieve. This time it wasn't to starve myself or to lose as much weight as possible. It was controlled weight loss. However, I started looking at foods differently. And I wouldn't eat something if I couldn't track the calories or the macronutrients in that food. And if I was supposed to eat 250 grams of protein that day, I was going to eat 250 grams. It wouldn't be 249. It wouldn't be 251. It would be 250. And this bodybuilding competition triggered another unhealthy relationship with food phase for me, which again lasted maybe a year, 2 years after this bodybuilding competition was over. And after that again, and I realized how obsessive I was with tracking all of my calories, all of my food, weighing all my food. I was taking a food scale to restaurants. I was walking into Ruby Tuesdays with a food scale with me so I could weigh out the 8-ounce steak that I ordered, making sure it was an 8-ounce steak and it wasn't a 9-ounce steak. I started avoiding social situations. I started avoiding hanging out with friends or going to dinner with friends because I wanted to stick to my diet. I had to stick to my diet. And I thought I was so disciplined, I was so strict. Getting in the best shape of my life meant so much to me that I would lose friends. I would lose family. I would skip these events that happen once in your life that you're never going to get back because I wanted to eat my meal that was weighed and tracked already for that day. I knew I had to find this balance, and I committed once again and decided I had to discipline myself to find this balance, which I can confidently say right now in my life, I have 100% achieved. Balance in nutrition and healthy relationships with food. And what I learned throughout this process is your diet doesn't have to be perfect in order to reach levels of success you want, maybe in terms of fitness, in terms of the way you look or feel or perform. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just needs to be consistent. A consistent diet and a perfect diet are two completely different things. And when I learned that and I realized that I don't have to control everything. I don't have to weigh everything. I don't have to track anything. I can make these healthy, responsible food choices on my own, and I can be aware of how it makes me feel, how it makes me perform. Life became so much more enjoyable after that. I share this story because I went through both extreme spectrums in terms of relationships with food. I had the worst, most negative, most unhealthy relationship with food, with an eating disorder that would have killed me if I would have kept going. It would have killed me. I wouldn't be here right now talking to you if I would have kept doing what I was doing. I can guarantee you that. And I've seen where I'm at now with the most balanced, most healthy relationship with food that I've ever had. And I can focus on life and relationships and my business and my training so much more when food isn't driving every decision that I make in my life. And I share this story because I wanted to help at least one person. In the beginning, I told you about the gentleman who reached out to me and his son was in the hospital. And when I called him, I shared the story. And all I wanted to do was I just wanted to see him in person and say, you got to get better, man. You got to. There's so much more life to live when you're not focused on food all the time. I imagine when I'm telling this story and talking to someone that's a kid in the hospital who's going through an eating disorder that needs to hear this message, because if they don't, it could be the end of their life. So that's my story. That's my eating disorder. And it's been a wild ride, but it has changed my life and it's taught me so much.